Do you remember Shauna Grant, the beautiful blonde actress from back in the early to mid 80s? She was awesome. What a wonderful person. I first met her on the shoot of The Young Like It Hot, and she was a wonderful actress, but they hadn't really discovered her yet, so she was kind of an up-and-comer in the business. And as her name got more popular, unlike a lot of other ladies, she didn't get the big head. She stayed down to earth and was just as sweet as can be. And I got to know her fairly well when we started shooting The Young Like It Hot. She was from Farmington, Minnesota, and I danced in Minneapolis quite frequently, like once or twice a year. And that wasn't very far from where she grew up. So I came to visit her one time when she was also back in Minnesota, and I happened to be dancing there. And I met her family, I met her parents, I saw her house that she grew up in. Very nice, upper middle class compared to what I grew up in. It seemed upper middle class to me. She certainly grew up with more money and more family than I had, a lot more family support than I had. But it was the kind of family, and there are many different kinds of families. I'll do a video about that and Medicine Wheels about different kinds of families at some point in the future. But we all come from a different kind of background. And her family was one of these where people were not allowed to have problems, per se. I mean, everything was supposed to be just fine, and don't complain, and don't expect us to bend over backwards if you're having an emotional problem. You should be strong enough, you should be disciplined enough to brush it under the rug and go on. So as most people go through teenage years and early 20s, we all have stress, depression, anxiety. You know, there are things we go through in life. Everybody just does. But these things were not to be talked about or accepted in her family. At least that's the impression I got. I could be wrong. I'm not a mind reader, but from getting to know her and getting to know what I saw in her family, it didn't seem that mental, emotional distraught was well supported. Again, I could be wrong, but this was my impression. So when Shauna had a boyfriend, and her boyfriend kind of talked her into going to California, and she got involved in this business one way or another, it was very frowned upon. And when her boyfriend and her broke up, her boyfriend is the one that went back to Minnesota and told her parents what she was doing. And of course, they were very upset. Something you got to remember, nobody gets into this business because they had a perfect life. Nobody chooses to get into that kind of movie business because everything in their childhood was peachy keen, and because they have no trauma and they have many choices in the world. That's just not how it goes down. So when you see somebody do something in this business, like ingest substances that are illegal or harm themselves, keep in mind, you can't blame the business because they didn't get into this business as whole, healthy, perfectly adjusted people. They got into this business with a problem to begin with. And this business just kind of made things worse, as things often happen in life. You know, you look for a solution, you hope that it's going to make things better, but it doesn't. So one thing led to another with Shauna, and she got involved with these substances. And I want to tread lightly here because YouTube has an algorithm. And if I say something that trips the algorithm, well, there goes my video. So you're going to have to read between the lines a little bit here. But she was doing the same kind of things that Paul Thomas was doing, which I discussed in a previous video. And that really is a bad thing to do. You know, I've known a lot of people who have succumbed to that temptation, and they think they're medicating themselves and making things better, but it only ends up making things worse. And the person who was giving her these things, who was supplying her, turned out to be her boyfriend, or turned into her boyfriend, I should say. That's probably more accurate. And they started living together. As all of this was happening, and she was getting involved in this kind of a world, she and I lost track of each other. She and I separated because I wasn't involved in that. And you know how it is. You hang out with people who have similar interests, people who have something in common with you. And when she got involved in all of that, we didn't have as much in common anymore. She wanted to spend time with people who did that, and I didn't want to be around that. So we were still friends. We were still cordial to one another when we saw each other in public places, but as far as trying to connect and, have some time together, it really didn't happen anymore as she got involved in that part of her life. This gentleman, I use the term loosely, that she got involved with and was living with, apparently he owed a bunch of money to people who were supplying him. So they came one day, and I believe there was an arrest involved in here somewhere, and they came calling for the money that was owed, and he wasn't there. I think he had gone to jail or something, and they wanted her to pay off his debt. So obviously this was very stressful to her with all of this happening. I think we've already established that she wasn't good at handling this kind of stress. I mean, who is, really? If all of a sudden a bunch of nefarious people, with bad reputations came to you and said, hey, you owe us X thousands of dollars and we want it now. How many of us would keep calm, cool, and collected and not freak out? So she did, and she said, I'll be back. I'm going to get some stuff from upstairs. She was going to leave the house because she couldn't afford to be there, and I think maybe that was collateral, perhaps, or something. This is just a guess. I don't know. But I do know that she went upstairs, and she got a hold of what we call fire stick that her boyfriend had, and this was a long one. So to do the dirty deed, she had to use her toe in order to get that to work. But she did, and she managed to end everything for her. Unfortunately, this tore me up. I had never known anybody that was a friend of mine or anything who had done that. And it took me by surprise. As I say, we had grown distant over the years as she got involved in that kind of thing. So I didn't know how deeply involved she had become. And when I heard what she had done, I was just devastated. Little did I know that this would be the first of many of my friends and acquaintances and coworkers to go down this sad, sad path. So I did not handle it well. I don't think I handled the news of any of my friends doing this particularly well. But the first was always the worst, because she was as sweet as they can get. I mean, Midwestern sweet, There are two kinds of people. Well, there's many different kinds of people, but in the business, generally, there are two kinds of people. There are the people who are genuine, who are real, who are down to earth, who are not pretentious, who have a good heart. And they're sincere when they tell you they missed you or ask how you've been. They're the kind of person you really would like to hang out with. And then there's other kinds of people who are into putting on airs. They want everybody to think they're all that. And I think they're pretty much convinced that they are all that. And somehow they see themselves as being above or better than others. And so they spend a lot of their time talking about how great they are and the wonderful things they've done and how marvelous their life is and how everything is just perfect in their world and how successful they are and how many projects they've got going in the future and what a wonderful background they come from and how supportive their family and everything is. I mean, nothing in the world is anything less than absolutely perfect. And we all know that's not the way the world works. So these people, and I don't know whether they've bought into it a whole 100% on their own, or if this is just some line of bullshit they're trying to sell everybody else and they know better. But a large portion of the people in this business, or that business I should say, because I'm not involved anymore, haven't been for decades, those people want you to think that they come from money, that they are wealthy, that they haven't a care in the world, and that everything is perfect in their life. Well, we all know better. She was not like that. And being around people who are like that makes things kind of difficult. You feel as though you have to live up to that. You have to be that good. You believe these things they say, at least at first. Some people wisen up and others never do. But you expect that if this is the truth, that you should be living a life as blessed as they are. So with all the things that were going wrong in her world, towards the end of her life, she got involved with Francis Ford Coppola. I don't know how they met. I don't know how this relationship started. But I do know that he had promised her a role in his next movie. Well, the awards show was coming up, the Adult Video News Awards, and there's a lot of awards in this business. I tell you, anybody in the entertainment business, we love to pat ourselves on the back. It's a wonder we're not walking around with broken arms from doing so. But this particular award ceremony was one of the classiest and most respected in the business. And we liked to pretend it was our Academy Awards. You know, we went out and we rented Bob Mackie gowns and we had our hair done and we got all fancied up. And at the event, everybody has these big round tables, just like the Academy Awards, and it's catered, you know, so you have a meal before the ceremony. And I was sitting at the table and right next to Shauna Grant and her party. Well, in her party was Francis Ford Coppola. So I sat next to Francis Ford Coppola. And they talked about this new movie that he was doing and how she was going to be in it and how this was going to make her a crossover star. Unfortunately, after Francis got to see all these stars and rub shoulders with these sexy ladies at the AVN Awards, he kind of dropped her. He never put her in a movie. He didn't return her calls anymore. And she was devastated. I'm not saying that that's the only reason she did what she did, but, hi, kitty, I'm sure it contributed. If you've been promised something like that, if you think your world is going to change, if you think all of a sudden your parents are going to respect you and appreciate you, and all of a sudden you're going to be appreciated and respected and no longer be on the down and out and estranged from your family, you get pretty excited and all of a sudden you're really counting on this. I know how this goes. I've done it. I've seen other people do it. And then 99.9 times out of 1,000, it's going to fall through. So it did. And I think that really devastated her. And then, of course, her boyfriend having the problems he had and the people coming to collect from her, it just was an avalanche, you know, a perfect storm that she really couldn't weather. It's just very sad because she was a very nice woman.